Good evening and welcome to episode 81 of the Jacksonian. I'm yours truly, Jatson Johnson, and I have with me is the co-host of Locked On ACC and Locked On Canes, the one and only himself, Alex Donno, as we're going over our take on the 2025 Miami season and out the day before kickoff between Miami and Florida State. Can Miami get it done against the Seminoles? Can they finally get that first ACC title? Who's been surprising us and disappointing us throughout the 2025 season, throughout the ACC, and much more? And let me tell you something, it's going to be a wild ride. How you doing today, good buddy?
Hey, Jackson, thank you so much for having me back. And this has been already a wild, really fun college football season. Miami is off to a really good start. I'm shocked at the start that Clemson is off to, preseason ACC favorite, Miami versus Florida State this weekend. I'm already getting anxious. We're a day before the game. I always get a little nervous, anxious, excited before these big rivalry games. So I'm ready to roll.
Well, I will say, though, before we get things started, for those who don't know about you, would you like to tell the audience a bit about yourself?
Well, I appreciate that. So I host two shows. You mentioned them daily. Locked On Canes, where we focus on all things Miami. It's been a busy, exciting season so far. And I also co-host Locked On ACC. My co-host is Kenton Gibbs, who's a former NC State defensive lineman. He hosts Locked On Wolfpack. But we talk all things ACC. Been obviously very football heavy for now. Basketball is going to be picking up really soon. So between those two shows, Locked On Canes, Locked On ACC, you can find me spitting multiple takes every single day.
Oh, man, they're always awesome to hear, man. And for those who have Amazon Prime or Fire TV, you can check out Alex Donno's appearance on Locked On College Football, where you got Drake Toll, former TCU head coach Gary Patterson, and Jesse, I forget his last
Holly.
name, but huh?
Holly.
Jesse Holly. There we go, Jesse Holly. Thank you. And you can see Alex Donno's appearance for a few minutes where he talks about the Miami Hurricanes, discussing the Miami Florida State preview with Locked On Seminoles host and Locked On Portal host Brian Smith. Alrighty, so you mentioned 2025 being a little bit disappointing for Clemson so far, and I gotta be honest. You want to know what 2021 through right now's version of Clemson reminds me of?
What?
2001 through 2009 Florida State with Bobby Bowden. Where like
Yeah?
1987 to 2000, every year they ended the top 5. They ended the year in the top 5. But then, yeah, they got ACC titles, but it wasn't much to brag about. It's like it was just so sloppy. Same thing we're seeing with Clemson. Yeah, they won the ACC 2024, but it looked kind of sloppy. The regular season did, of course. 2022, they lost South Carolina once again, won the ACC, kind of sloppy. Now this year, it's a 1-3 start, and it just feels like it's going to get worse from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially surprising to me with the immediate drop off from last year. And it's not like you mentioned, it's not like there were world beaters last year, but Clemson was able to get into the ACC championship game primarily because Miami kind of choked it away. But Clemson gets into the ACC championship game. They win the ACC. They get into the CFP. So it felt like a very successful season for them. And then Clemson this year returned 84% of their production from last year. So it really had a lot of people fooled. And I say fooled, even though they could still end up, having a really good season, but they're already 0-2 in the ACC, 1-3 overall. It's a terrible, terrible start for them, even if they do turn it around. But just the fact that Cade Klubnik, their starting quarterback, doesn't look like the same player from last year. He looks more like the Klubnik of 2 years ago, whereas last year he really rose to the occasion. Clemson, it kind of goes to show you the struggles that, well, not even struggles, they just have chosen barely to use the transfer portal over these past few years. Dabo did bring in 3 transfers, but perhaps he should have brought in a transfer running back. They, use a converted wide receiver running back. And to this point, the Tigers defensive line has not been nearly as good as advertised. You know, they were scouted to be among the very best defensive lines in the entire country. And, you know, TJ Parker and Peter Woods can't carry that whole group by themselves, apparently. And they've been a little inconsistent so far. So, but yeah, but like you said, I think your comparison to like 01, 09 Florida State, even though like Dabo Sweeney is not like nearly as old as Bobby Bowden was at that time, but the way he coaches though is very outdated. You're just in terms of, you know, kind of not embracing the modern era of college football, even though he's only, I think he's like 50, 55, something like that.
Oh,
But it's just he hasn't evolved with the times, and it's been, and again, like their Clemson could end up tearing off a bunch of wins, but at 0-2 in the ACC, unless there's just so much chaos throughout the rest of the conference, you feel like they're already basically out of the ACC championship game, because you know you would need to have a bunch of teams lose 2 or more games in conference, which just doesn't seem that likely with, you know, the way Miami's been playing. You know, Florida State. Florida State beats Miami this weekend. They'll have just the one conference loss and a favorable schedule for the most part. They do face Clemson the rest of the way. Georgia Tech, they may be able to go on a run and perhaps run the table in the ACC this year. Louisville, they're 1-0 in the ACC. So Clemson would have a really, really tough time getting to the postseason.
Oh, no doubt about it. And you know, when we look at tomorrow's edition of Clemson, North Carolina, that's just disappointing. So, I mean, like Bill Belichick and North Carolina are supposed to be running the town, right? But here's the thing: North Carolina's not won the ACC since 1980. That's the last time they won a conference title. Like, good grief! I mean, it's like that was the year where it was Steve McQueen's last year in movies before he succumbed to cancer, of course. But and we had like the 1980 presidential election between Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan. And that was when Alabama got upset by the Mississippi State Bulldogs in a 6-3 loss. Mississippi State ended that win streak, but then Georgia Bulldogs were showing everybody who runs college football that year.
That's incredible historical perspective there. And that matchup this weekend, it's funny because they are making history with the coaching matchup. Well, kind of making history. It's only the second time ever that you're going to have a multi Super Bowl winning coach on one sideline and a multiple college national championship winning coach on the other, with Belichick versus Dabo Sweeney. The only other time that ever happened was a 1993 bowl game with Bill Walsh at Stanford against Joe Paterno at Penn State. So first time in a very long time you've got head coaches with these sort of credentials going head to head.
Yeah, I mean that was the second stint of the Bill Walsh era at Stanford. Like, wow, it's like, man, that's still kind of weird to say. Stanford.
Yeah, before I saw that stat, it was posted on a few publications, and like I had totally forgot. Oh, Bill Walsh was at Stanford at that time. Like I had totally that era. I mean, I was a kid when that. You probably weren't even born yet at that time.
Nope.
I was a kid. I didn't. I guess I wasn't aware that was even a thing with Walsh being back at Stanford at that point.
No, but it was like it was just so funny looking back at it. But oh man, the Stanford Cardinal and the Penn State Nittany Lions. Ugh, good grief. And I will say Louisville's looking pretty good. Virginia's looking pretty good. Elliott is obviously off the hot seat with that upset over Florida State from Friday night. This is why I always tell people, if a slate looks sloppy, don't just not watch the game, because when you do, upsets tend to happen.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Virginia, who is ranked now, and rightfully so, after beating Florida State, they're ranked 24th. They go on the road to an unranked Louisville, and Louisville is favored by about a touchdown at home. But it's an interesting matchup because Louisville has had some trouble so far on their offensive line. And, you know, Miller Moss, their new starting quarterback, the USC transfer, like he was really good, like in the comeback win. The second part of the game against Pittsburgh wasn't so good early in that game, through a pick six in the game. With their offensive line, they've had trouble. Like they've got two of the best running backs in the country with Isaac Brown and Duke Watson, but I think that their O-line and Brown and Watson have been a little bit banged up, so they haven't really like broken out so far this year the way I think they can down the road. But again, like part of me wants to pick Virginia to win that game because of what Chandler Morris and company just did against Florida State, and that team looks really solid. But I still think Louisville's talent level overall is a slight cut above. And with Louisville being the home team, if it was in Charlottesville, I might go the other way. I think in Louisville, I think you're going to see the Cardinals win, and they're definitely like Louisville to me is among the contenders to get to an ACC championship game. I think that they're right up there. But if Virginia wins on Saturday, you have to start taking Virginia seriously. And Virginia, they're technically undefeated in ACC play, even though they lost to NC State this year, because that was a non-conference game. They scheduled each other like independently of the ACC schedule, which is weird, but it's a thing that sometimes happens. So Virginia is technically an undefeated ACC team after that win against Florida State. If they beat Louisville, we're going to have to really start taking UVA seriously as a team that could get to the ACC championship game.
Oh, no doubt. It's like it's weird to see Virginia play for conference title because it's like the only two times I can recall in my life. I mean, I know they went to the ACC title in 2019, lost to Clemson, of course. I mean, everybody did in 2019, of course.
Yeah.
But they played the Orange Bowl against the Florida Gators. But I know that Mike London had them playing for a spot for whoever wins the Coastal Division gets into the ACC title game in a battle against Virginia Tech, rivalry week 2011. And 07, Al Groh almost had them going to the ACC title, but lost to Virginia Tech.
And Virginia Tech, you talk about a weird team this year. For their first 3 games, they looked just dreadful. Like they looked like one of the worst teams in the country. They fire their head coach Brent Pry. Philip Montgomery, the OC, takes over as the interim head coach, and then they got a bounce back win against NC State, which I thought, not to say NC State is great, but I thought NC State, I think it was a home game for NC State. I thought that they would be able to get it done pretty comfortably. So I don't know. Again, like maybe it was such a problem with their previous head coach. Maybe they weren't playing for him, but I know they have talent. Like Kyron Drones is a good player, but Virginia Tech, obviously not a team I think is gonna win an ACC championship or anything like that. But maybe they do end up giving UVA trouble when they meet up.
Well, and they played hard against South Carolina, of course, but when they gave up 34 unanswered points against Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt was showing everybody, we're not intimidated by Lane Stadium. We're not intimidated by the blackout. And then Old Dominion just terrorizes them. It's, oh my God, like 65 straight points allowed.
Yeah, awful.
That's terrible.
Yeah, that Old Dominion game was not even as close as the score looks
Eeyore.
like. Before. Yeah.
Eeyore was happier than they are. And Eeyore has a nail on his butt. I mean, it's like, oh my God. I mean, thank God they got rid of Brent Pry.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I mean, is Philip Montgomery making a play for the head coaching job? Something tells me he is if they do make a bowl game.
I mean, you can't think of a better way to interview for the permanent head coaching job than to get that team into a bowl game as actually functioning the job of head coach. And I know Virginia Tech fans have their wish lists. Like they're hoping there's a way, that they could convince Shane Beamer to leave the SEC and follow in his dad Frank's footsteps at Virginia Tech. I don't necessarily see that being all that realistic unless the family ties are stronger than I even think that they are. But I mean, Philip Montgomery, he's got the opportunity. If he just gets that team to 6 wins, that may be enough for him to get an opportunity to be the actual head coach for a while.
Oh man, that would be cool, but it's like I think Shane Beamer's better off at South Carolina creating his own legacy at Columbia, because it's like you don't want to live off your dad's legacy. You want to create your own legacy, but that's just me. But North Carolina State, Yeah, like my buddy Matt Zimick from College Wire, USC Trojans Wire, and USC at the Voice College Football wrote an article about it's time to consider Dave Doreen and North Carolina State basically start a new era. And it's because the fact Tom O'Brien was fired for much less. He was fired for much less after 2012. I mean, yeah, they came up short of an ACC title game appearance in 2010, but Dave Doreen was hired for much more than get beat by Virginia Tech at home, like on the CW. Good grief. It's like you've been there for 13 years, since a year before the CFP started. And I know it's North Carolina State. It's North Carolina State. They haven't won a conference title since 1979. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care. What do you want, North Carolina State? Do you want to be better than yourself? If you want to be, then consider ending the Doreen era. Just say, look, it's been fun. We love you. We thank you for all the years you've done, but it's time to go.
I think that's exactly what they're going to do. I mentioned earlier that my co-host on Locked On ACC is a former NC State player. He actually played for Dave Doran at NC State. Was part of Doran's first recruiting class there. He knows Coach very well. But even Kenton Gibbs would say, and he has told me that he thinks that era is coming to an end, and that I don't know if they're going to make an in-season change necessarily, although if you suffer more losses like that one against Virginia Tech, you probably do make an in-season change. But regardless, he's not going to make it till next year. It's just gotten stale. I think the Dave Doran era has run its course, as you were hinting at NC State. And I will say that the NC State athletic department and their whole collection of boosters, athletic boosters, I think are showing more ambition in general. I mean, if you look at the basketball hire that they just made, they went out and got one of the hottest coaching candidates in America in Will Wade. Like, that showed a lot of ambition. And then they have spent a lot in the basketball transfer portal to help build Wade a roster, and they're putting more resources into basketball recruiting. And if you do that with basketball, I think there's a sign that they want to make a move with football as well. And, Kenton had told me after that Virginia Tech game that the boosters are really, as you can imagine, really getting upset with the direction of the football program. So I do think they're going to make a change because, even though obviously, North Carolina State doesn't have like a history of being a national football title contender or anything like that. But what's happening there right now is just not acceptable with their football program. And I think they are going to make a move, and I think they're going to try to make a little bit of a splash. They're going to have to invest more to make that job more attractive.
Well, and as we saw in that ad, I think that Chucky doll has more life than Dave Doreen. So it's like
Yep.
good grief. But I think you are right about the boosters. Like, they're gonna get a really good head coach. Like, something tells me they're gonna get Bob Chesney from James Madison.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be one of the hotter up and coming, and that's like the type of profile I think of the type of coach they would want to get. Some obviously another guy who's going to be a really hot candidate, John Summerall at Tulane, who like surprisingly stayed there. Like somebody of that profile, someone who's like looking and deserving of a bigger job, I think is what they're going to go after.
Agreed. I think Summerall. I think he's looking for an SEC job.
Could be, yeah.
I don't think he'll go to NC State, but that would be awesome if he did. Like, but then again, it was like nobody would have thought Willie Fritz would be leaving for Houston, but yet here we are.
Yeah,
He went to Houston, so it's like, and he's doing magical things over there. Shout out to our good buddy Parker Ainsworth.
Oh, Parker is a great dude. He does a great job on Locked On Houston Cougars.
Oh, he does. Like, Locked On Cougs. I always love the intro where he goes, Cougs has. Here we go. But here's the team we're here to talk about, of course, the Miami Hurricanes. I mean, Sean McDonough threw out his puberty voice over Miami getting that game-winning field goal over Notre Dame. It's always good to have Sean McDonough get excited. That means you're really getting good.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he's not exactly Gus Johnson. Like you have to really give him a reason to be excited.
Well, hell, he doesn't need to be Gus Johnson. That's the beauty of it. It's like I was so excited when he called that home run of the Guardians Tigers
Yeah.
in the bottom of the eighth. I was like, yes, I know it's my birth week because Sean McDonough's getting inside and he's calling my Alabama Crimson Tide on Saturday. But but like the Hurricanes, like huge win over Notre Dame, and it's like okay, let's see if they can continue this. They have so far with a dominating victory over South Florida. They dominated Florida. I mean, like the victory is a little sloppy over Florida, but it's like everybody's bringing their A game, of course. But
Mhm.
you've got Miami, Florida State this Saturday. Can you rule the state of Florida? Can you be the kings of Florida?
And it's something Mario Cristobal wants very badly to do for a second straight year to get that, state of Florida sweep. And you're not going to have many opportunities at that because I can't imagine Miami and Florida are going to be playing any more regular season games in the foreseeable future with the SEC going to the 9-game conference schedule and they're
I
Florida willing to
cried
keep.
like a baby when I heard that announcement, man. I
Yeah,
did.
yeah. So obviously, like in Florida's case, they're going to keep Florida State as an annual rivalry, and they'll probably play a couple of other, cupcakes to round out after the 9, SEC games and the Florida State game. So Miami, Florida is not going to be a regular thing probably ever again, unless there's format changes in the future to those schedules. And so yeah, this is an opportunity because if you can win that state of Florida, it's big not only for your college football playoff chances down the road, team morale, fan morale, but it's really big in recruiting. And Mario Cristobal, his superpower is high school recruiting. It's really his passion. It's really how roster building is the thing that I think he does best. And I think you're seeing so far this year. I think you're seeing the results of that roster building because Cristobal and his staff have worked to really build a team that can win games from the inside out. That if you can control the line of scrimmage, if you can dominate with your offensive line and dominate with your defensive line, then you're going to be in and hopefully winning every game you play. And also, I think we're going to find out this Saturday at Doak because Miami actually hasn't played a road game yet this year. This will be the first one. So you'll find out how that travels because like one of those old cliches is that when you have a defense, when you have a running game, that those things really travel. And Miami's had both of those things at home so far. And I look at this game, and there's obviously I could see scenarios for how either team wins. Right? You could see scenario for Florida State pulling it off. You could see a scenario for Miami pulling it off. I think the Florida State scenarios more involve the necessity to, I think, out scheme Miami's size and talent. Whereas in the case of Miami, if you line up 11 guys versus 11 guys, you're trying to win 11 individual matchups on every play. I think that favors Miami, especially up front. But Gus Malzahn can be a really hard offensive coordinator to scheme against. Him and his quarterback Thomas Castellanos, and I think Florida State I think needs to win the turnover margin. I think if it's even, or if Miami wins the turnover margin, it's probably a Hurricanes victory. I think Florida State needs to create those difficult matchups for Miami's defense with a lot of the eye candy and the side to side stuff that they do with their running game and keep Miami off guard. And I think Florida State probably needs to get an extra takeaway, maybe when Miami's driving. So, but I look at Miami, Jackson, I think if the Hurricanes can keep a somewhat, mistake-free game, and if they can, get control of the line of scrimmage, which on paper they should be able to do, I think this could end up being like a really, really physical, exciting game. And if it plays out that way with the physicality, I think Miami probably wins a close one.
Well, and there's been a history of wide rights and wide lefts throughout this
Yeah.
rivalry. I don't know why, but I feel like there's going to be a wide right or a wide left tomorrow night. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I feel like that's going to happen. And you're going to see TikTokers talking about it. You're going to see the drunk frat boys on Instagram talking about it. You're going to see people on Twitter talking about You're going to see a lot of people talk about this game as well as you should. And I know, like, Florida State people were saying, "Oh, Kirk Herbstreit, had to come back to this game." Well, number one, he was going to call this game anyway.
Yeah.
Secondly, his buddy Lee Corso is being honored at this game, so of course he's going to be there for his compadre, man. I mean, it's
Yeah,
like,
no, that's true.
yeah, I mean, it's just like I honestly felt like game day was going there until like Virginia upset Florida State, and then like Alabama beat Georgia. Which, I mean, because I know I've talked with my buddy Austin where he was just asking me like, which games you think you think they have a chance at Virginia Louisville? It's like, no, they're not going to Virginia Louisville. They're going to go to Florida State, Miami, or Bama Vanderbilt. That's what's going to happen. And it looks like easy pickings from there if Miami can win this game against Florida State, right? I don't think so. Because, I mean, like last year, easy pickings, right?
Yeah,
One game
yeah.
away, you're in the ACC title. And they lose to Georgia Tech and they lose to Syracuse. I'm not saying something similar like that is automatically going to happen with Cristobal and the Hurricanes, but it's just, I feel like every time we see things are about to turn the corner in Coral Gables, it feels like the piano falls on top of our heads, like we're wildly coyote, or we're just like there's like some rule where like Miami's not supposed to get to the AC title or win the AC, and it's like you got the sign of "Help me." That's what it feels like. But
It's been that way for the last 20 years. I mean, I'll say, and despite, because that narrative is there, and I'm very aware of it, Jackson. Obviously, I've lived it. Covering Miami for a number of years, multiple decades at this point. So I've seen it happen enough times that it's always going to be in the back of my mind. With this said, if, and again, this is an if, because I'm not, guaranteeing victory against Florida State. I think it's going to be a tough game. But if Miami does get through Florida State, I will say that at that point, they would be a lot more battle tested than they were at this time last year. Because at this time last year, Miami did beat Florida on the road, but Florida is Florida. There's a reason why they're on the cusp of firing Billy Napier, and Miami didn't play anybody last year who was ranked at the time that they played them. There were a couple teams they played that were ranked at some points of the season, but never at the time Miami played them. Miami at this point, this will be the third team that they've played that's been ranked at the time of the matchup. Notre Dame was in the top 10 opening week, I think number 6. South Florida was ranked 18th when Miami played them. Obviously Florida was unranked. They were ranked at the start of the season for what that's worth. Florida State deservedly probably should be even ranked a little higher than they are at number 18, to be honest, but they're deservedly within the top 25. So if Miami can win this game, they'll be more battle tested than they were at this time last year. And I would fear the late season collapse a little bit less this year for the main reason that it seems like this team has a defense. Last year they had an offense. There was no D. Like you weren't stopping anybody. So if people wonder like how did Miami lose that, the road game to Syracuse that sealed their fate to miss the ACC championship game last year, they couldn't hold the lead. They couldn't get a stop, and they had a couple of offensive mistakes, but no margin for error. They couldn't make those mistakes because the defense couldn't stop anybody. So, I think their new defensive coordinator, Corey Heatherman, has done a sensational job so far. And, Ruben Bain, who's, the top graded player in the country, according to Pro Football Focus at this point in Miami's pass rush, it's really been unblockable. He was playing through injury last year. He just wasn't himself a year ago. He is himself again at this time. So I think Miami has the physical makeup to avoid that type of late season collapse this year. But I understand that until they actually finish the season, people are going to ask those questions. Like I don't think this team is the same as last year's team. But I could understand anyone wanting to have evidence to the contrary before they anoint Miami as a different team.
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Pitt. That's usually kind of a scary team when nobody expects you to.
And it's going to be cold at that time of year. Thanksgiving weekend on the road. Miami's not used to playing in that sort of weather.
No, that and My famous saying about Pitt is Pittsburgh is where dreams go to die.
Why is it you say that?
Louisville can tell you that.
Yeah.
Penn State can tell you that from 2016. I mean, Pat Narduzzi has done that to top ranked teams in years past.
That's true.
I mean, they almost made dreams go to die for Clemson last year, but didn't.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'm kind of wondering if Narduzzi is losing his touch a little bit.
Well, and they should have beaten Louisville last week. They had like a 17-0 lead, and they kind of blew it. So, but they, again, that could they could get it over the finish line the next time.
Oh man. And even though Syracuse doesn't have their starting QB, I mean, like Fran Brown in Syracuse, like I'm watching for them. Is that like another kryptonite for my kind of like how Georgia Tech usually is Syracuse that kryptonite, or is it just 1 year?
Yeah, it's hard for me to shake off what I just saw from Syracuse at home against Duke, where they just got absolutely obliterated. I don't know. I think Syracuse a year ago, they had really a magical season from Kyle McCord, who people don't realize Kyle McCord led the nation in passing. He threw probably more than any other quarterback in the country, but he led the nation in passing. Cam Ward did not. Kyle McCord did last year. And, Syracuse, the first few games, they were looking pretty sweet with Steve Angeli at quarterback. And then Angeli, suffers the season-ending injury, and it's only been one game. Like Ricky Collins started the Duke game, so it's just one game. Maybe he'll settle in, but they didn't look like the same team with Ricky Collins compared to what they looked like with Steve Angeli. So I don't know. I mean, this is not to take anything away from Syracuse. Miami lost there on the road last year. Syracuse comes to Miami without Steve Angeli. Anything can happen, Jackson, but that's not really. That's not really the one that I'm looking at. It's like the possible upset loss. Pittsburgh, you were right to bring that one up. That one can be concerning at the end of the year. Miami should be able to beat NC State, but it's interesting because but the thing is, like, their quarterback CJ Bailey was a South Florida legend that Miami kind of let get away. Like he was the quarterback at Chaminade Madonna for Jeremiah Smith and for JoJo Trader, who's on Miami's roster. So I maybe there's a scenario where CJ Bailey comes back to Miami and just like, I don't know. He might either dominate or maybe he'll feel so much pressure being back home that he won't play well. I don't know, but it's a game still. I'm interested to see the CJ Bailey South Florida return. I've got it circled on the calendar for that reason.
Oh man, I'll tell you this. Like, I'm hoping SMU does win out by the time they play Miami. Because I want to see there be a chance that College Game Day goes there for November 1st. I mean, I don't think it'll happen, but there's a shot. There's a chance. And I'll tell you who my guest picker idea would be for Miami SMU.
Sherwood Blunt?
Bill Fagerbaik, the guy who does Patrick Star, because he went to school at SMU, and Kirk Herbstreit has been known to be a fan of the TV show Coach, and Bill Fagerbaik played Dauber on that show.
Oh, I know exactly. I didn't realize the actor's name, but I did watch. I watched Coach with my dad back in the day. I remember the character.
Yeah, it's like, think about right there. It's like Dauber picking some games, with the College Game Day crew, like Dauber with Pat McAfee. Like I just want to hear him go, I'm Squidward, I'm Squidward, I'm Squidward, Squidward, Squidward. And then just Pat McAfee singing along in his own Pat McAfee way.
Yeah, Pat is so entertaining. I mean, I saw him a couple weeks ago when they were in Miami, and he jumped off the high dive. Like that dude puts a lot of work into entertaining the folks at home.
Oh man, that'd be so funny. Like Nick Saban being the Squidward, he'd be like, "What am I doing here?" Like it's like, and and the guy doing Squidward's voice, I forget his name, but he's just like, "You're telling me, brother." Oh man. But that would be a wild ride right there if game day was to go to Miami SMU. It's like Dauber as the guest picker. Please make it happen.
Yeah, yeah. And SMU, they haven't played a conference game yet
No.
either. They looked a little shaky, non-con, losing to TCU and to Baylor, but they have their whole ACC schedule in front of them, and they went 8-0 in regular season ACC games last year. They went undefeated in their previous conference the year before, so they haven't lost a conference game in like 3 years. So we'll see. We'll see what happens for them.
Well, I will say, it's like Rhett Lashley. I would not be shocked if he's distracted by the Arkansas job opening.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's only a matter of time before he ends up at a bigger job. I know he loves SMU because he got his his high. He raised his profile there as the OC before he came back to be the head coach. But yeah, if you get an SEC job calling, it's a hard thing to say no to.
I mean, on the one hand, do you stay at SMU to be running the lone Texas team in the ACC, or do you do what Mike Elko did, strike with the irons hot? That's something Rhett Lashley has to really think
Yeah.
about, though, because you don't want to wind up like you're Dave Doreen. You don't want to wind up like you want to make sure you leave for the right job if you do leave. Maybe Arkansas isn't that right job because I mean they're so focused on
That's
trying.
what I'm wondering. Yeah,
Yeah,
because I mean, not every SEC job is necessarily the marquee one, right? So yeah.
right. It's like they're so they think they're like 1964, but they're more like 2024.
But yeah, no, it's a good question you raised because I know Lashley. I think he does feel a lot of loyalty to SMU, but he's a young coach. He's in his 40s, I think, and it's like I think there is something to be said for the strike while the iron is hot. So it would be tough, and then obviously if SMU would want to keep him, they would have to give him a big raise. So they would have to be up to the task to do that. So yeah, it's going to be one of those to watch at the end of the year for sure because there's going to be some bigger jobs that are going to want to interview him. So we'll see what happens.
I'll agree, no doubt about it. And Georgia Tech again, if they beat Georgia in Atlanta, well, it would be the first time since 1999 that they've beaten the Georgia Bulldogs not in Athens. And again, that was months after the start of SpongeBob SquarePants.
Ah.
The last time Georgia Tech beat Georgia not in Athens. Like, oh my God. Like, because it was like you and I right here on this spot, before week 1 of last year, even before week 0, we talked about, it's like, I felt like Brent Key was going to lead Georgia Tech to a victory over Georgia and make sure he was going to end that streak.
He came close.
Oh, yeah. Because, I mean, it was just, it's coming. It's just not a matter of if, but when at this point. And I'm looking at it. Yep. 2000, 2008, 2014, 2016, all in Athens. Yep. 1999. Why are they putting Georgia Tech in neutral site stadium? It's like the only thing that makes this right if you have Sean McDonough call the game. Yeah. I don't want Jesse Palmer calling that game because he's made it clear he cares more about that Bachelorette and that Food Network show than he does about Georgia Tech.
Well, and Georgia Tech is what's so fascinating about them these last couple of years, and I think that they do, to me, I think they have a better. This is the best team of the Brent Key era. So they have a legit opportunity to get to the ACC championship game this year. But something that's been noticeable about them these last couple of years with Haynes King at quarterback, with Brent Key at head coach, they tend to play up and down to the level of the competition, right? You put them in there with Georgia, who they took to 8 overtimes last year, with Miami, who they beat 2 years in a row, and you tend to get their best games. Then you put them on the field with a Wake Forest, and they didn't look like anything special whatsoever this past week. I mean, Georgia Tech, they got a win over Wake Forest in overtime last week, with a gift from the officials. Georgia Tech in the neutral zone. It was a clear offsides, and then Robbie Ashford, the Wake Forest quarterback, and this was on a drive that if they got another first down, it would have iced the game and it would have been over. So Robbie Ashford, the the Wake Forest quarterback knew he's about to get a free play. So instead of taking the check down with a guy open for the first down, he throws it downfield to try and, take advantage of his free play, incomplete pass. And the ACC refs didn't call the most obvious offsides or encroachment that you've ever seen in your entire life. And then Georgia Tech gets the football back right after that, and they get a game-winning drive. Or not a game-winning drive, game-tying drive. The game goes to overtime. So, it was, but at the same time, like, maybe that was the wake-up call for Georgia Tech. You can learn something even in victory. They've got an easy ACC schedule the rest of the way, and it wouldn't surprise me if they played Georgia really tough. Not that wouldn't, matter against getting to the ACC championship game, non-conference game, but it would not surprise me if Georgia Tech has another great showing against UGA and maybe has a couple of clunkers against teams that they're supposed to beat. That's just been their MO the last couple of years.
What this 2025 Georgia Tech Wake Forest games reminded me of a little bit? 2009 Georgia Tech Wake Forest, because that game went to overtime, and that was a win by Georgia Tech. Guess what we see Georgia Tech later do in the ACC? Not saying that's automatically happening.
Hey, could happen.
Oof, that would be cool. Like Brent Key getting it done. It's like, and he's showing all of us why we should take that chance on him. It's like, I'm glad that Georgia Tech got him. I'm glad. He's like, he's getting things rolling, especially when they're underdogs. Like, what's going to happen Black Friday? I feel like it's an upset is coming over the Bulldogs.
It wouldn't shock me whatsoever. And they really should have won that game last year.
They got screwed. Ugh. It's like we heard more about Georgia's playoff hopes than we did about Georgia Tech's history against Georgia and the last several times they've played on Black Friday and Thanksgiving. I mean, it's like, they played on Thanksgiving in the 90s, of course, and it was on like ABC, which, I believe it was 1995 they played on there. But, I'll be able to make sure I've got some stats ready for that, because if they got Palmer calling that game again, I know he's not going to be ready for it.
I'll be thinking about that Bachelorette show.
Yep, or that Food Network show. There's yummy food, but it's not more important than the clean old-fashioned hate rivalry.
That's right.
So there we go. Well, Alex, for those who don't know about the magic that you're creating, tell them where they can find you.
Well, thank you again, Jackson, for having me, and thank you for the opportunity to plug. Yeah, I co-host Locked On ACC every day. You could search for that wherever you get your podcasts. Search for it on YouTube. And I also host Locked On Canes, talking Miami Hurricanes every single day. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your pods. And again, thank you so much for having me. Keep doing your thing, man. Keep rocking it. And hopefully we get some more great games this weekend.
Oh, agreed. And you can give Alex Donno a follow on X and on Alex Donno Miami at Instagram and Threads. All right there. And you can check me out on Jackson Johnson 979, where I'm 294 subs away from that magic number 1,000. Thank you, all you guys, for helping me get closer. And you can check out my latest episodes of the Jacksonian, where I had on Chris Drury from Minister Sports, Fireside Yankees, Painting the Corners, and much more shows that he's doing, as we talked a little bit about the Ohio State Buckeyes in college football, the New York Yankees, the Seattle Mariners, the Yankees-Giants game on opening day being on Netflix, and what it means for not just Major League Baseball, but what it can potentially mean for college football. And you could check out my other episode with Sonny Verma from Locked On Illini, where we discussed Illinois and the Chicago Bears, and a little bit about the Cubs, and the shout out that Locked On Cubs got in the 7th inning stretch a few months ago. Awesome moment for not just the Locked On Cubs, but the Locked On Network as a whole. And you can check me out on Jackson VOCFB on X/Twitter and on Instagram and Threads at JacksonJots543908, where I've got my latest updates of the Jacksonian and Alabama, the voice of college football, and my latest calls on the Paul Feinbaum show, where they are once a week. And how long it's going to be, well, I'm just going to keep on calling until he decides to enter into politics eventually. And you can also check out my appearances on the Locked On West Virginia podcast with Mountaineer Paul as he goes over a lot of the takes on the West Virginia Mountaineers, and I join him once, twice a week. And of course, you can check me out on Alabama with the Voice of College Football, where it's Jeffrey at Only Talk Sports, Coach Smith Hines, and myself discussing our takes on the latest news and notes on the Alabama Crimson Tide. And of course, for Missouri Week, we will be having a guy from On 3 join us. Who is that guy? That's why you tune into Alabama at the Voice of College Football. We're 65 subs away from that magic number 3,000. So tell your friends, your family, and the cashiers at Publix about the magic I'm creating on the Jacksonian, Alabama with the Voice of College Football, and much more. And don't forget to tell the cashiers at Publix about the magic that Alex Donno is creating on Locked On ACC and Locked On Canes. And with that being said, we wish you all a happy Friday night and to stay safe, stay cool, stay away from that heat, or in some areas, stay safe, stay warm. It's cold out, and we will see y'all soon. Take care, everybody.